The implications of Buddhism in Vietnam can be characterized by its long history, starting from the first century in the Common Era until modern day. The history of Buddhism in Vietnam is characterized by its periods of acceptance and rejection during different empires and regimes that rule the people and the land. Like the majority of other countries with large Buddhist populations, the Vietnamese people practice two different schools of Buddhism, the Mahayana school and the Theravada school. Although the majority of Buddhists in Vietnam practice some sort of the Mahayana school, there is still an emerging sect that practice the more traditional Theravada principles. This large population had large impact on the outcome of the Vietnam War during the 1960s and 1970s that are still remembered today. Their main goal was, and still is, to live in peace while accepting their culture and the culture of others. Leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. and President Lyndon Johnson have recognized the peace works of monks during the war, such as the monk Thich Nhat Hanh. The beginning of Buddhism in Vietnam can be traced back to the first century in the Common Era and has had an effect on its culture, people, regimes, and land ever since. Vietnamese Buddhism is heavily impacted by Chinese Buddhism, which originated in India with the story of Siddhartha and his journey to becoming what we think today of as the Buddha. Buddhism is the most influential religion in modern day Vietnam, with approximately 50% of the population defining themselves as Buddhists. There's approximately 3 million Buddhists living in Vietnam today. Buddhism was imported into Vietnam beginning with the legend of Chu Dong Tu. The legend is about a young boy who lived with his father and was very poor. They were so poor that they could not afford any clothes except for one loincloth that would be shared between the father and the son. On Chu's father's deathbed, he told Chu that he did not want to be buried with the cloth, and that he wanted Chu to keep it to remind him of his father. Originally, Chu was going to bury his father without the cloth, but he loved him so much that he buried him with it. From that day on, he had nothing to hide his naked body from the world, so he hid in the water during the day and fished, and traded the fish for rice with the merchant ships during the night. One day, while hiding in the water, he saw the ship of the local princess Tien Dung. She wanted to stop the boat because of the beautiful scenery and to take a bath. Chu quickly ran behind some bushes and covered himself with sand. Once Tien started to bathe, the water she poured on herself uncovered the naked Chu and startled her. Chu was so scared and embarrassed that he started to run away, but Tien thought that their encounter was ordained by God, gave him clothes, and said that she wanted to marry him. King Hung Vuong, Princess Tien's father, was very mad about this marriage because he wanted his daughter to marry a man of royal blood, not a poor peasant, so he disclaimed her royal title. Tien and Chu were banished from the palace and began to travel the country together. During their travels, they ran into a Buddhist monk named Phap Quang, who gave them a cane and a hat. The Buddhist told them to put the cane into the ground and to put the hat on top of it, and a palace would appear for them to live in. So they followed his directions, put the cane into the ground, and placed the hat on top of it, and a palace appeared. The next morning they took the cane out of the ground, and the palace, along with Chu and Tien, disappeared into the clouds. Every year there is the Chu Dong Tu festival, which is celebrated in the village Du Hua at the Chu Dong Temple. The festival is held every year from February 10th to the 13th, which involves a trip to the local river along with a reenactment of the legend. The procession then makes their way to the temple where they begin incense presenting rituals done by an elder man and woman of the village that are highly respected by the people. The ceremony is then followed by a ceremonial dance performance by the local children wearing traditional turbans and dresses. The ceremony symbolically provides an opportunity for Chu and Tien to visit the places that they were not allowed to visit because of their expulsion from the kingdom. In the 2nd century in the Common Era, the Vietnamese word for Buddha was directly imported into the word But, which at the time Buddhism was influenced by the Theravada school, and the word But was seen as a deity that helps good people and punishes bad people. In the 4th and 5th centuries in the Common Era, because of the emergence of the Mahayana school influences from China, the word But was replaced by the word Fat from the Chinese pronunciation of the Buddha. In 544 in the Common Era, Lai Nam Day became the king of Vietnam. He was also known by the name Lai the Buddhist. In the Lai and Tran dynasties, Buddhism developed rapidly and was seen as the state religion, which influenced all aspects of life. Lai Nam Day was born on October 17th in the year 503 in the Common Era. He became the regional magistrate of the Zhaozhou region, which was comprised mostly of modern-day northern Vietnam. In 541, along with the Chinese Civil War, he started to become very unhappy with the local corruption and resigned from his position. After his resignation, he gathered together the local nobility and built an army to dispel the Chinese from the land. After his successful campaign, which ended in 543, he was crowned the first emperor of Vietnam and the founder of the Lai dynasty, which lasted from 544 to 603 in the Common Era. During his reign, he established the first Mandarin University, implemented many land reforms, and promoted literacy and Buddhism among the people. Due to serious disease, he died in the year 548 while still fighting the Chinese. In the 14th and 15th centuries during the Lai dynasty, Confucianism replaced Buddhism as its state religion, and Buddhism entered a state of decline. In the 18th century, King Quang Trung tried to revive Buddhism by building and renovating Buddhist temples throughout the country. In the 20th century, Buddhism experienced resurgence in the southern provinces. In summary, the history of Buddhism can be divided into 4 periods. The first period was the beginning of the 1st century to the end of the Chinese reign, which is a period of formation and development of Buddhism. The second period is characterized with Buddhism reaching its peak during their period of independence. The third period is starting from the Lai dynasty to the end of the 19th century, where Buddhism was in decline. The fourth period is from the beginning of the 20th century until now, and is a period of revival of Buddhism. Along with the emergence and the decline of Buddhism within Vietnam, there is also an emergence and decline of the 2 schools of Buddhism practiced in Vietnam. The Mahayana school is the most widely practiced. It is considered the greater vehicle, which is the notion for salvation. According to this belief, it is possible for all people to reach enlightenment according to the guidance of a bodhisattva. The greater vehicle is in reference to group salvation and is opposed to individual accomplishment. This is in direct opposition with the Theravada belief that enlightenment is reserved only for a select few scholars and monks. It can be said that the Mahayana monks interpret the text more liberally and the Theravada interpret the text more literally. The bodhisattva is a soul or person whom has already reached enlightenment, but has chosen to postpone their access to nirvana in order to teach others. Pure Land Buddhism is a theology designed to help believers attain Sukhavati, or the Buddha land, in one lifetime. The most important aspect is the idea and belief in the existence of multiple Buddhas. This form of Buddhism became popular and well-liked within the secular community of Vietnam because it makes visualization and meditation easy. Zen Buddhism is the most influential Buddhist practice which focuses on the ultimate simplicity of the Buddha mind. It stresses the prime importance of the enlightenment experience and the usefulness of ritual.